The first laugh didn't come from the gallery. It came from the plaintiff's table, sharp, confident, and loud enough to bounce off the courtroom's wood-paneled walls like it owned the place. Grant Holloway sat there in a tailored suit that still screamed money, even if the man inside it was drowning. He leaned back like the chair was a throne, his arm draped casually along the backrest, and he looked across the aisle at his wife the way a man looks at a bad investment. With disdain and a hint of annoyance that it existed, Elena Holloway stood alone. No attorney beside her, no neatly stacked binders, no polished whispers in her ear. Just a simple blouse, a folder held too tightly, and a calm expression that didn't match the way her fingers trembled. The judge, Honorable Marla Chen, glanced over her glasses at the case file, then at Elena, then at Grant. "Mrs. Holloway," Judge Chen said, voice neutral but firm, "the court notes you're appearing pro se today, without counsel." Elena's voice was soft but steady. "Yes, Your Honor." Grant chuckled again, leaning forward, eager to be heard. "That's because she doesn't believe in hiring professionals. She likes hobbies, like pretending she knows the stock market." A ripple of discomfort passed through the gallery. Elena didn't look back. Grant's attorney, Victoria Sloan, stood with practiced grace. She was the kind of lawyer who made even the word objection sound expensive. "Your Honor," Sloan began smoothly, "my client is requesting equitable distribution of marital assets, immediate liquidation of certain investment holdings acquired during the marriage, and spousal support. Mr. Holloway's financial circumstances have changed drastically due to market volatility and due to his own choices," Elena said quietly. Grant's head snapped toward her, eyes narrowing like she dared to speak above her station. Judge Chen held up a hand. "Mrs. Holloway, you'll have your opportunity. Ms. Sloan, continue." Sloan nodded. "Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Holloway has accumulated substantial debts. Creditors are pursuing him aggressively. Meanwhile, Mrs. Holloway sits on a significant investment portfolio that she failed to disclose in good faith during preliminary disclosures. We will show she intentionally concealed assets, and we will ask the court to compel her to liquidate and contribute." Grant couldn't resist. He looked straight at Elena, smiling like a knife. "You heard her, liquidate. That's when you sell the thing you don't understand." Elena swallowed, her jaw tightening. The injustice didn't come from a single sentence. It came from the way everyone seemed ready to believe him. The polished man with the polished lawyer over her. The quiet woman with no one at her side. And that's what Grant was counting on. Because Grant Holloway had built his entire life on one idea, that he was smarter than everyone else. Especially his wife. He rose, turning slightly to face the judge, but speaking just loud enough for Elena to hear. "Your Honor, I built our life. I earned. I provided. I made the decisions. She just benefited. Now that the market took a swing, I'm asking for fairness. She can't hoard money while I'm being hunted by lenders." Elena's breath caught. "Hoard?" she repeated, barely audible. Grant smirked. "Oh, don't act offended. You wouldn't know what to do with money anyway. You'd probably invest it in... what was it? That ridiculous stock you once brought up at dinner?" A brief flash crossed Elena's face. Pain, memory, and something else, something sharper. Judge Chen leaned forward. "Mr. Holloway, this court will not tolerate humiliation. Keep your comments relevant." Grant raised his hands, falsely innocent. "Of course, I just want the court to understand who we're dealing with. She's impressionable." Elena looked down at her folder. Her knuckles whitened around it. And as the clerk called the case into motion, as Ms. Sloan arranged her exhibits like she was preparing a performance, Elena's mind drifted back to the moment this all began. The night she suggested a stock. The night Grant laughed. And the night she decided she would never beg him to take her seriously again. Before we go any further, if you enjoy intense courtroom stories where arrogance collides with consequence, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. Because what happened next didn't just change a marriage, it detonated a man's entire illusion of superiority. It had started like a joke. At least that's how Grant treated it. Dinner was barely touched. Elena had cooked his favorite meal, the kind she reserved for anniversaries and apologies, but Grant didn't taste it. He was too busy staring at his phone, eyes flicking across charts like a gambler watching roulette. Elena had tried to sound casual when she spoke. "I read about a company today," she said. "It's small, but it's expanding into renewable infrastructure. They just got a major contract." Grant didn't even look up. "It's called Arden Green Energy," Elena continued. Their numbers are clean, their debt is manageable, and their... That's when he finally looked up. Not at the food, not at her effort. At her audacity. Arden Green, he repeated slowly, like the words were chewing gum stuck to his shoe. Elena, where did you read about it? A mommy blog? Her cheeks warmed. No, a financial report, their quarterly filing. Grant burst out laughing, loud and delighted, as if she'd told the funniest joke of the year. You read a quarterly filing? He leaned back, eyes shining with mockery. Oh my God, that's adorable. Grant, she said, trying to keep her voice calm, I'm serious. It could be a good long-term investment. He waved a hand. Babe, listen. Investing isn't about feelings and little stories you find online. It's about access, timing, big money, real plays. Elena's voice tightened. It's not about feelings, it's about fundamentals. Grant's smile turned cruel. Fundamentals? You think you're Warren Buffett now? She stared at him, stunned. Why are you being like this? Because, he said, leaning in, I spend 12 hours a day making moves you can't even pronounce. And you want to stroll in here with your little renewable infrastructure fairy tale and tell me what to buy? Elena's stomach sank. I'm your wife. I'm not trying to compete with you. Grant scoffed. You don't compete with me, Elena. You can't. That sentence, it stayed with her. Not because it was loud, but because it was honest. Grant wasn't teasing. He believed it. And then, to prove his superiority, he opened his laptop at the table and turned the screen toward her like he was showing a child a magic trick. You know what I'm buying? He said, fingers flying. Sky Titan Biotech. It's about to explode. My guy says there's a breakthrough announcement coming. I'm going heavy, real heavy. Elena's eyes widened. But the company has lawsuits and their cash flow is... Grant's gaze sharpened. Don't. Elena forced herself to breathe. I'm just saying it might be risky. Grant's smile was ice. Risk is where winners are made. He clicked a button. Helena watched the numbers on the screen, the amount he was investing, and felt a cold wave crawl up her spine. Grant, she whispered, that's almost everything. He didn't blink. It's called conviction. You're using leverage, she said, voice shaking. That's... Grant snapped the laptop shut. That's enough. I didn't ask for a lecture from someone who alphabetizes spice jars for fun. Elena's eyes stung. That's not fair. Grant stood, towering over her. You want fair? Fine. You buy your little Arden Green stock with your hobby money. Put in what, $20? And then when it tanks, don't come crying to me. He leaned closer, voice lower, venomous. And don't embarrass me by pretending you understand my world again. That was the moment Elena stopped trying to be understood. She didn't argue, she didn't cry. She nodded. And after Grant went to bed, Elena opened her laptop, not his, hers, and transferred the small savings she'd quietly built over years. She added the inheritance her grandmother left her. She added the money she'd earned freelancing at night, work Grant called cute. She bought Arden Green energy, not to prove him wrong, but because she trusted herself. Back in the courtroom, Mrs. Sloane's voice cut through Elena's memory like a blade. Mrs. Holloway, Sloane said, is it true you opened an investment account without informing your husband? Grant smiled like he'd already won. Elena looked up slowly. Yes, she said, it's true. Grant's grin widened, because he thought that confession was the beginning of her downfall. He didn't realize it was the beginning of his. Mrs. Sloane paced with the calm confidence of someone who was used to breaking people in public. And is it also true, she continued, that you did not list this account during initial financial disclosures in your divorce filings? Grant leaned forward, eyes gleaming. He wanted the judge to see Elena as a liar, as a thief, as someone who had to be punished. Elena's throat tightened. She glanced at the papers in her folder, then at Judge Chen. I disclosed what I believed was required, Elena said carefully. Sloane tilted her head. What you believed? Yes. Sloane smiled. Mrs. Holloway, the court doesn't run on beliefs, it runs on facts. Grant couldn't resist adding his own commentary. Facts might be hard for her, she's more of a feelings person. Judge Chen's gaze snapped to him. Mr. Holloway. Grant lifted his hands again, the picture of innocence. No disrespect, Your Honor. I'm just trying to help clarify. Sloane approached Elena holding a document. Let's clarify then. This is a brokerage statement. The account is in your name. It shows a balance far exceeding what you initially reported. Do you recognize it? Elena's fingers trembled, but her voice stayed even. I do. So you admit, Sloane said smoothly. that you failed to disclose a substantial asset. Elena inhaled, steadying herself. I didn't fail, Please answer yes or no, Sloane cut in sharp. The courtroom felt smaller, hotter. Elena looked at the judge again, then back at Sloane. Yes, I did not include the full amount in the first filing. Grant exhaled loudly, like he'd been waiting for that moment to breathe. Sloane turned to the judge. Your Honor, this is a clear sign of bad faith. Mrs. Holloway attempted to hide wealth while my client is facing severe financial hardship. Grant leaned back, satisfied. Exactly. Judge Chen's expression remained controlled, but her pen moved across her notes. Mrs. Holloway, why was it omitted? Elena opened her mouth, but the truth was complicated. Because how do you explain that your husband made you feel so small, so foolish, that you stopped believing you deserved to protect anything? How do you explain that you feared he'd take it, not because he needed it, but because he couldn't stand the idea that she had something he didn't control? Elena's voice came out quiet. I wasn't trying to hide it. I was trying to keep it safe. Grant laughed again, short, mocking. Safe? From who? From your own husband? Your Honor, listen to her. She acts like I'm some villain. Elena finally looked at him. You're not a villain, Grant. He smirked, triumphant. She continued, and her voice hardened. You're worse because villains usually know what they are. A hush fell. Sloane's eyes narrowed. Your Honor, I move to strike that as inflammatory. Judge Chen's gaze lingered on Elena. Mrs. Holloway, answer the question, why was it omitted? Elena's heart hammered. She could feel the weight of every eye in the room, the expectation that she would crumble, that she would apologize, that she would confirm the narrative Grant had built. So she did the one thing Grant never expected. She told the truth. Because, Elena said, voice trembling only slightly, my husband told me I was too weak and too stupid to understand money. He told me I couldn't compete with him. And when I started earning and investing on my own, I knew he wouldn't see it as mine. He'd see it as his. Grant stood abruptly. That is a lie. Judge Chen's gavel hit once. Mr. Holloway, sit down. Grant's face flushed with anger. Sloane quickly recovered, voice smooth again. Even if that were true, which it isn't, this is still a marital asset if acquired during the marriage. My client is entitled to half. Grant nodded, sharp and eager. Half, that's the law. Elena's stomach turned. She'd prepared herself to defend her choices. But she wasn't prepared for the way Grant's eyes sparkled at the thought of taking from her. Like stealing was the only way he could feel tall again. Judge Chen looked down at the statement. How much is in this account, Mrs. Holloway? Elena swallowed. As of last month, just over $4 million. An audible gasp rippled through the courtroom. Grant froze. Then his face twisted into something ugly. Shock, then rage, then a frantic hunger. $4 million, he repeated, voice cracking. You had $4 million and you let me... Sloane placed a hand on his arm, steadying him, but her eyes were sharp, calculating now. Judge Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. Mrs. Holloway, explain how you accumulated this. Elena looked down at her folder, then up again. It was one stock, she said. Grant let out a bark of laughter, but it sounded strained now. One stock, sure, let me guess, your little fairy tale company? Elena met his eyes. Yes, she said, Arden Green Energy. Grant's laugh died halfway through, because somewhere deep down a memory surfaced. The dinner table, her calm voice, his cruel laughter, and the moment he told her to put in $20. Now in front of everyone, the joke wasn't funny anymore. Half the courtroom leaned forward, hungry for the rest. And right here, quickly, before the next wave hits, if you're feeling this tension, tap like and subscribe. Stories like this only get darker before the truth cracks the room open. Because Grant Holloway hadn't just underestimated his wife, he'd built his entire downfall on it. Grant regained his posture fast, like a man scrambling to put armor back on after someone found a crack. Your Honor, he said, voice sharper. This is exactly what we're talking about. She's been sitting on millions while I'm being torn apart by creditors, and she wants to play victim because I told her the market is complicated. That's ridiculous. Judge Chen's gaze stayed steady. Mr. Holloway, you will speak through counsel. Sloane stepped forward. Your Honor, regardless of emotional context, these profits were realized during the marriage. They're subject to equitable distribution. We're requesting an order to liquidate a portion immediately. My client is facing urgent financial exposure. Elena's pulse jumped. So you want me to sell my shares? Sloane smiled politely, like she was offering a reasonable compromise. We want you to comply with the law." Elena's voice tightened. "The law doesn't say I have to rescue him from his own recklessness." Grant slammed his palm on the table. "Recklessness? You have no idea what you're talking about." Judge Chen's gavel struck. "Mr. Holloway." Grant sat back down, chest heaving. Sloane turned back to Elena. "Mrs. Holloway, how did you fund this account?" Elena answered carefully. "Savings, freelance work, money my grandmother left me." Sloane pounced. "And during the marriage, did you ever deposit joint funds into this account?" Elena hesitated. Grant's mouth curled into a smile again. He could smell blood. Elena spoke. "No." Sloane raised an eyebrow. "No joint funds, none at all." "No." Sloane's tone turned slightly mocking. "So you're claiming this is separate property?" "Yes." Grant laughed under his breath. "Here we go." Sloane lifted another document. "Then explain this. A transfer record showing a deposit of $10,000 from a household account into your brokerage 2 years ago." Eleanor stared. Her mind flashed. Grant demanding she pay an unexpected tax bill he said would ruin them if she didn't. Grant handing her instructions. Grant snapping, "Just do it, Elena. For once, don't ask questions." Elena's throat tightened. That wasn't household money. Sloane's smile widened. "It came from a joint account, the account you both used." Elena's voice hardened. "He told me to do it." Grant scoffed loudly. "Of course, blame me." Elena's eyes locked on him. "You told me it was for taxes. You said it was urgent. You said we'd lose the house if I didn't." Grant's face twitched, just a flicker, but he recovered quickly. "I don't remember that." Judge Chen leaned forward. "Mrs. Holloway, do you have proof of that claim?" Eleanor's fingers tightened around her folder. "I have messages." Sloane's expression stayed smooth, but her eyes sharpened. "Messages can be fabricated." Elena's jaw clenched. "They weren't." Grant leaned toward his attorney, whispering something quick. Sloane nodded slightly. Then Sloane turned and delivered the line like a finishing blow. "Even if we entertain your story, Mrs. Holloway, commingling one deposit can convert the entire account into marital property. You understand that, yes?" Eleanor's stomach dropped. Grant's smile returned, bigger now. "Looks like your little secret savings account isn't so separate after all." Elena heard murmurs behind her, people deciding what kind of woman she must be, people deciding she was either a liar or a fool. Judge Chen's voice softened slightly, but only slightly. "Mrs. Holloway, the court will need documentation if you're claiming misrepresentation or coercion." Eleanor nodded, but she could feel the trap tightening. Because yes, she had messages, but she didn't have an attorney to get them admitted properly. She didn't have the confidence to outmaneuver a trained litigator like Sloane. And Grant knew it. He leaned forward again, voice dripping with condescension. "Elena, stop embarrassing yourself. You can't win this. You don't even know the rules." Elena's hands shook. Then she looked down at her folder again. Inside were printed statements, letters, screenshots, things she'd collected quietly, patiently, like someone building a case against a storm. She wasn't unprepared. She was simply alone, for now. Judge Chen exhaled, glancing at the clock. "We will take a short recess. When we return, we will continue testimony and address the motion for immediate liquidation." Grant leaned back, satisfied. He whispered something to Sloane, and she smiled. Elena didn't move. She stared at the papers in her folder like they were the only solid ground left. And then, just as the courtroom began to rise, a voice came from the back of the room. "Your Honor, before you recess, I need to enter my appearance." The room froze. Heads turned. Elena's breath caught. Because the man walking down the aisle wasn't just any lawyer. He was carrying a briefcase that looked heavier than paper. He walked with the kind of calm that comes from knowing you're holding the match in a room full of gasoline. And when he reached Elena's side, he spoke gently, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Mrs. Holloway," he said, "I'm sorry I'm late." Grant's face drained of color, because he recognized him. Daniel Reyes, the attorney who didn't lose. Judge Chen paused mid-motion, eyes narrowing slightly as she assessed the newcomer. "State your name for the record," she said. Daniel Reyes stood straight. "Daniel Reyes, Your Honor, bar number 48271. I represent Mrs. Elena Holloway." The courtroom erupted into whispers. Grant's chair scraped as he shifted, suddenly restless. This is a stunt," he hissed. Sloane's eyes flicked to Reyes with a flash of irritation she couldn't fully conceal. "Your Honor, counsel is appearing mid-hearing without notice." Reyes nodded respectfully. I understand the concern. Mrs. Holloway retained me recently. Due to scheduling and travel constraints, I arrived as soon as possible. I'm prepared to proceed. Judge Chen's gaze moved to Elena. Mrs. Holloway? Elena's voice was quiet, but for the first time that day it didn't shake. Yes, Your Honor, Mr. Reyes represents me. Grant stared at her like she'd pulled a knife from her sleeve. He leaned toward her, voice low and venomous. You couldn't even hire a lawyer without copying my taste. You always needed my world to feel important. Elena turned slightly, meeting his eyes. No, Grant, I hired him because I'm done being small. Judge Chen tapped her pen once. Very well, we will proceed. Mrs. Sloan, you may continue, but be mindful, new counsel will be granted reasonable latitude. Sloan's smile was tight now. Of course, Your Honor. She turned back to Elena, but Reyes stepped forward. Before we continue, Reyes said calmly, I'd like to address the court's concern regarding disclosure and commingling. Sloan's eyes narrowed. Objection, this is not his turn. Reyes didn't flinch. Your Honor, the foundation of plaintiff's argument is that one transfer converted the entire account into marital property. That's inaccurate under our jurisdiction when the transfer was induced by fraud and the account's origin is verifiably separate. The courtroom quieted again. Grant's breathing sounded louder than it should. Judge Chen's attention sharpened. Mr. Reyes, do you have documentation? Reyes opened his briefcase and withdrew a neatly bound packet. Yes, Your Honor. Full statements from the account's opening, 3 years prior to marriage, documentation of inheritance origin, and communications showing the plaintiff pressured Mrs. Holloway to transfer funds under false pretenses, specifically to cover his margin call. Grant's head snapped up. That's a lie. Reyes turned his gaze to Grant slowly. It's documented. Sloan stepped in quickly. Your Honor, these allegations are inflammatory and irrelevant to the asset division. Reyes's voice stayed even. They're relevant because Mr. Holloway is asking this court to make Mrs. Holloway pay debts that he created through deception, including debts he attempted to conceal by using her to patch holes in his failing portfolio. Grant's face reddened. I never used her. Reyes held up a hand as if calming a child. We'll let the evidence speak. Judge Chen's eyes narrowed. Mrs. Sloan, you stated creditors are pursuing Mr. Holloway. Are these debts solely in his name? Sloan hesitated, just a fraction of a second. And in that fraction, Elena realized something. Grant hadn't told his attorney everything. Sloan answered carefully. Some are in his name, Your Honor, others are tied to marital obligations. Reyes stepped forward with a single page. Your Honor, if I may, this is a loan agreement, plaintiff's signature only, no spousal signature, and yet Mrs. Holloway's personal information appears throughout the application. A hush fell again. Eleanor's stomach tightened. She hadn't known the full extent. Grant's voice rose. That's standard paperwork. They ask for household info. Reyes didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. They also ask for consent when you use a spouse's identity markers, which you did not have. Sloan's lips pressed together. Your Honor, this is becoming a fishing expedition. Judge Chen's gaze sharpened. No, it's becoming clear this court may be dealing with financial misconduct. Grant's confidence wavered for the first time. He looked around the room, as if searching for allies, for the familiar comfort of people believing he was the smartest man present. But the air had changed. Reyes turned slightly toward Elena, voice softer. Mrs. Holloway, do you wish to testify regarding the origin of your investment account and the circumstances of that transfer? Elena took a slow breath. Yes. Sloan crossed her arms. Then let's hear it. Elena stepped forward and spoke with a clarity that surprised even her. I opened the account before Grant and I married, she said. I put in my grandmother's inheritance, I added my earnings. I bought Arden Green Energy because I believed in it. Grant mocked me for it. He told me I was weak, that I didn't belong in his world. Grant scoffed, but his voice sounded forced now. I didn't mock you, I teased. Elena looked at him. You humiliated me, over and over, and then when your investment started collapsing, you panicked. You told me we'd lose everything. You made me transfer money to my brokerage because you said it was for taxes. Grant's eyes flashed. Because it was. Reyes lifted his phone slightly. Your Honor, with permission, I'd like to submit the text message thread as Exhibit A. Judge Chen nodded. Proceed. Reyes handed the printouts to the clerk. Sloan's confidence faltered as she read the first lines. Grant leaned forward, trying to see, trying to control. But he couldn't. Because once words are on paper, Arrogance doesn't erase them. And right now, quick pause, if you're still with me and you want more stories where the courtroom becomes the battlefield for truth, make sure you like the video and subscribe. Because from this point forward, Grant Holloway wasn't just losing a case, he was losing his mask. When court resumed fully, the atmosphere wasn't the same. Grant sat stiffer. Sloane's pen moved faster, like she was recalculating. Elena sat beside Reyes, her hands no longer shaking, because now she wasn't fighting alone. Judge Chen adjusted her glasses. Exhibit A is admitted for the limited purpose of showing communication between parties. Continue, Mr. Reyes. Reyes rose. Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Holloway, can you read this message aloud? Elena glanced down, then read, voice steady. Grant, don't ask questions, just transfer it. If you love me, you'll do it. I'm handling everything. You wouldn't understand. A murmur swept through the gallery. Grant's face tightened. That's taken out of context. Reyes nodded. We'll read the context. Continue. Elena read the next line. Grant, if you mess this up, we're done. I swear to God, Elena, I can't deal with your weakness right now. The word weakness hung in the air like smoke. Judge Chen's gaze flicked to Grant. Mr. Holloway, do you deny sending these messages? Grant's voice sounded strangled. No, but, Your Honor, that was a stressful time. The market was volatile. I was protecting my family. Elena looked at him. You were protecting your ego. Sloane stood abruptly. Objection argumentative. Judge Chen's eyes narrowed. Sustained, Mrs. Holloway, answer only what's asked. Elena nodded once. Reyes continued. Mrs. Holloway, after you transferred that money, what happened? Elena's eyes didn't leave the memory. 2 days later, Grant told me it wasn't enough. He said there was another urgent payment. He asked me to co-sign something. Reyes's voice remained calm. Did you? No. Grant snapped. Because she didn't trust me. Elena's voice stayed level. Because you refused to show me the documents. Reyes turned to Judge Chen. Your Honor, at this time I'd like to call a witness. Sloane's posture straightened. Who? Reyes glanced at the door. Ms. Natalie Brooks, Senior Loan Officer, Crestline Bank. The doors opened, and a woman in professional attire walked in holding a file folder. Grant's face drained. Because Crestline Bank wasn't just any bank. It was the bank that had called him 27 times in 1 week. Natalie Brooks was sworn in. Reyes approached. Ms. Brooks, are you familiar with Grant Holloway? Brooks nodded. Yes, Mr. Holloway applied for multiple credit instruments through Crestline over the last year. Reyes's voice tightened slightly. Did he apply using his spouse's financial information? Brooks hesitated, then answered clearly. Yes. Grant exploded out of his chair. That is not what happened. Judge Chen's gavel struck hard. Mr. Holloway, one more outburst and you'll be held in contempt. Grant sat down, seething, but his hands trembled. Reyes held up a document. Ms. Brooks, is this the application Mr. Holloway submitted? Brooks took it, scanned it, and nodded. Yes. Reyes pointed to a section. Whose social security number is partially listed here? Brooks looked up. Mrs. Elena Holloway's. Elena's breath caught. Her chest tightened with shock and anger. Reyes's voice stayed controlled. Did the bank receive a spousal consent form? Brooks shook her head. No, we did not. Sloane rose quickly. Objection. The witness is implying wrongdoing. Judge Chen's stare was sharp. The witness is stating facts. Overruled. Grant's voice cracked. I didn't steal her identity. It was just a formality. I was going to add her later. Brooks looked uncomfortable. Mr. Holloway also requested expedited approval due to an urgent margin obligation. That word margin hit the room like a slap. Grant swallowed. Because now the picture was forming for everyone. The arrogant man who mocked his wife's little stock had been quietly begging banks to save him from his own gamble. Reyes's gaze flicked to Elena. Mrs. Holloway, did you know your information was used? Elena's voice turned low. No. Grant leaned forward, desperation slipping into his tone. Elena, I was trying to keep us afloat. I was trying to... She cut him off with a calm that felt like a verdict. You were trying to keep yourself on top. Sloane moved fast, trying to regain control. Your Honor, even if Mr. Holloway made errors, the fact remains. Mrs. Holloway has millions. She benefited from the marriage. She must contribute. Reyes looked at her, expression unreadable. Contribute to what, Mrs. Sloane? To debts he hid? To loans he took without consent? To a collapse he caused while mocking her every warning? Sloane's jaw tightened. To fairness. Reyes turned to Judge Chen. Your Honor, fairness requires truth and we're not finished. Grant's eyes darted. because he could feel it now. Something was coming. Something he couldn't laugh away. Reyes opened another folder, thicker than the last, and the sound of paper sliding against paper felt louder than it should. "Your Honor," he said, "I'd like to introduce Exhibit B." Sloane's eyes narrowed. "And what is Exhibit B?" Reyes didn't look at her. "A post-nuptial agreement signed by both parties." The courtroom froze. Grant's head whipped around. "What?" Elena's breath caught. She hadn't expected Reyes to lead with that yet. Sloane recovered quickly. "Your Honor, we have never been provided any post-nuptial agreement." Reyes nodded. "That's because it benefits Mrs. Holloway." Grant stood halfway, voice rising. That's not Elena." Elena's eyes stayed on the document in Reyes's hand. "Because there was an agreement." Grant had written it. Not because he loved Elena, but because he feared losing his own money. Years ago, when Grant's portfolio was soaring and his ego was even higher, he demanded Elena sign something. He'd called it protection. He'd said successful men needed clean lines. And Elena, tired of fighting, had signed. But Grant had signed too. And now he couldn't even remember what he'd given away, because he'd been too busy admiring himself in the mirror of his own success. Reyes handed the document to the clerk. Judge Chen read silently, eyes moving line by line. Sloane's composure cracked slightly. "Your Honor, we object to any agreement that was not properly disclosed." Reyes's voice was calm. "It was disclosed. It was filed with the county clerk. It's public record." Grant's face went pale. Judge Chen looked up. "Mr. Holloway, did you sign this?" Grant's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Yes," he said, voice hoarse, "but it was about my accounts." Reyes nodded. "It was about separation of property, specifically investment accounts." Judge Chen flipped to a highlighted section and read aloud. "Each party waives any claim to the other's separate investment accounts, whether current or future, and acknowledges full responsibility for their own investment decisions and liabilities." The words landed like a hammer. Grant's eyes widened, disbelief giving way to panic. That's not what it means," he barked. Judge Chen's gaze sharpened. "It's exactly what it means, Mr. Holloway." Grant turned to Elena, voice breaking into something desperate. "Elena, you knew this would. You set me up." Elena's voice stayed quiet. "I didn't set you up, Grant. You set yourself up. You made me sign it because you didn't want me touching your money." Grant's eyes burned. "Because you didn't know what you were doing." Elena met his stare. "And yet I'm not the one drowning." The gallery murmured again, louder now. Sloane stepped in, trying to salvage. "Your Honor, even if the agreement waives claims to investment accounts, it does not absolve marital obligations. Mr. Holloway still seeks spousal support based on his current financial hardship." Judge Chen leaned back slightly. "Spousal support is not a punishment tool, Mrs. Sloane. It's a balancing mechanism." Reyes's voice sharpened for the first time. "And balancing requires the court to consider misconduct, financial misconduct, identity misuse, and intentional humiliation used as control." Sloane's tone turned icy. "Are we really turning this into a morality play?" Reyes looked at her. "No, we're turning it into the truth." He turned to the witness stand again. "Your Honor, I'd like to call one more witness." Sloane's eyes narrowed. "Who now?" Reyes's gaze shifted toward the back of the courtroom. "A representative from Arden Green Energy." Grant's lips parted slightly. Because Arden Green wasn't just Elena's fairy tale stock. It was now one of the hottest companies in the sector. Clean contracts, booming growth, headlines Grant used to ignore. And if someone from Arden Green was here, then Elena's little hobby wasn't just personal. It was powerful. A man stepped forward, well-dressed, composed, carrying a folder with the company logo. He was sworn in. Reyes approached. "Please state your name and position." The man spoke clearly. "Michael Vance, Chief Financial Officer of Arden Green Energy." Grant's throat bobbed as he swallowed. Reyes asked, "Mr. Vance, are you familiar with Elena Holloway?" Vance smiled slightly. "Yes, very familiar." Grant's voice came out strained. "Why?" Vance looked toward Elena, respect in his eyes. "Because," he said, "Mrs. Holloway is not just an investor." The courtroom leaned in. "She is," Vance continued, "one of our largest individual shareholders." Grant's face twisted, rage and disbelief colliding. Reyes's voice dropped, deliberate. "And does Arden Green have any business relationship with the entities pursuing Mr. Holloway's debts?" Vance paused. Then he delivered the line that made Grant's world tilt. Yes, he said. Arden Green recently acquired a portfolio of distressed financial instruments, including Mr. Holloway's note. Grant froze. His mouth opened. No sound came out, because the debts he came to court to force Elena to pay were no longer owned by the bank. They were owned by the company she had believed in, a company she had quietly built wealth in, a company where her voice mattered. And the man who laughed at her was now begging the wrong courtroom for mercy. For a moment, Grant looked like the air had been pulled from his lungs. He stared at Vance, then at Reyes, then at Elena, like one of them would blink and reveal this was a prank. This is manipulation, Grant finally croaked. You're weaponizing a corporation in a divorce. Reyes didn't even flinch. We're clarifying ownership, Mr. Holloway, something you should be familiar with. Sloan stood, voice sharp. Your Honor, this is irrelevant to the marital dissolution. Corporate acquisitions have nothing to do with spousal support. Reyes turned to the judge. Respectfully, it's directly relevant. Plaintiff claims he's being crushed by creditors and needs the court to force Mrs. Holloway to liquidate her separate assets to bail him out. The court must understand the nature of these debts, how they were incurred, and the fact that plaintiff is not acting in good faith. Judge Chen looked at Vance. Mr. Vance, explain this acquisition. Vance nodded. Arden Green purchased a set of distressed notes from Crestline Bank as part of a broader transaction. Mr. Holloway's note was among them. Grant's voice cracked. Why would you buy my debt? Vance didn't answer him. He looked at Judge Chen. It was financially advantageous. The notes were discounted significantly. Grant's face contorted. Discounted like I'm trash? Elena finally spoke, voice quiet but cutting. That's what happens when you gamble with leverage, Grant. People buy the pieces after the crash. Grant turned to her, eyes wild. You did this, you bought my debt. Elena's gaze didn't waver. I didn't buy it to hurt you. Grant blinked. Then why? Elena's voice softened just a little. Because I didn't want strangers humiliating you the way you humiliated me. A hush fell again, heavier this time. Grant's face twitched with something like shame, but it was swallowed quickly by anger. So you admit it, he snapped. You had the power and you didn't tell me. You let me suffer. You watched me drown. Elena's eyes glistened, but her voice stayed steady. You didn't drown, Grant. You pushed yourself into the water and then demanded I jump in after you, so you wouldn't have to admit you were wrong. Sloan stepped forward, trying to regain control. Mrs. Holloway, this is emotional theater. The issue is division of assets and support. Reyes lifted a document. Then let's stay on assets and obligations. He handed it to the clerk. Your Honor, Exhibit C, a ledger of transfers from Mr. Holloway to a third party during the marriage. Sloan's eyes narrowed. Third party? Reyes's voice stayed calm. Yes, a woman named Kendra Lyle. Grant's face went still. Elena's breath caught. Because Elena knew the name. She'd seen it once, on a hotel receipt that Grant claimed was for a client. She'd seen it again on a text message that popped up on his phone while he was in the shower. She never confronted him. Not because she didn't care, because she'd learned confrontation only gave Grant a stage to humiliate her. Judge Chen's voice sharpened. Mr. Reyes, are you alleging an affair? Reyes nodded. I'm alleging financial diversion tied to a relationship outside the marriage, which is relevant to equitable distribution and any request for support. Grant slammed his hands on the table again, forgetting the warning. This is insane. Judge Chen's gavel cracked. Mr. Holloway, that is your final warning. Grant sat, breathing hard. Sloan tried to cut in. Your Honor, alleged infidelity is not automatically... Judge Chen held up a hand. It becomes relevant when money moves. Reyes looked at Elena gently. Mrs. Holloway, do you recognize the name Kendra Lyle? Eleanor's voice was quiet. Yes. Grant laughed, but it sounded desperate now. Oh, now she's going to pretend she's been betrayed. Classic. Elena turned to him slowly. I'm not pretending. Reyes continued. Mrs. Holloway, did Mr. Holloway ever accuse you of being weak or useless when you questioned his spending? Elena nodded once. Yes. Grant barked. Because she was. The gallery reacted audibly. Gasps, whispers, disgust. Reyes didn't raise his voice, and yet he sent tens of thousands of dollars to Ms. Lyle while telling his wife she didn't deserve to ask questions. Sloan's face tightened. Your Honor, this is character assassination. Reyes' eyes stayed on the judge. No, it's accounting. Judge Chen's gaze lingered on the transfer ledger. Mr. Holloway, she said, do you deny these transfers? Grant's lips parted. He glanced at Sloane as if she could rewrite reality. Sloane's expression was strained. "Your Honor, my client's private expenditures are—" Judge Chen cut her off. "Answer the question." Grant's voice came out low. "No, I don't deny the transfers." Elena's stomach twisted, pain rising like bile. Grant stared at her, eyes hard. "I worked, I earned, I spent what I wanted." Elena's voice finally trembled, not from fear but from fury. "You spent like a king while calling me a servant." Judge Chen's face hardened. This court has heard enough to be deeply concerned about Mr. Holloway's credibility, financial conduct, and motive. Grant's bravado cracked. "Your Honor, please, this is getting out of hand." Judge Chen looked at him with cold clarity. "No, Mr. Holloway, this is getting into the truth." And the truth was about to get even sharper, because Reyes hadn't revealed the final piece yet, the one that would silence Grant's laughter permanently. Reyes stood, holding one last document like it weighed more than paper. "Your Honor," he said, "there is one more exhibit, Exhibit D." Sloane's voice was tight. "How many surprises does the defense intend to drop into this courtroom?" Reyes looked at her evenly. "As many as truth requires." Judge Chen's gaze was unwavering. "Proceed." Reyes handed Exhibit D to the clerk, then to Judge Chen. Judge Chen read silently. Her expression didn't change immediately, but her eyes sharpened line by line, until something in her face hardened into certainty. She looked up. "Mr. Holloway," she said, "stand." Grant rose slowly, posture stiff, trying to reclaim dignity with straight shoulders. Judge Chen held the document up slightly. "This is a recorded promissory note assignment. It indicates that the holder of your debt is not merely Arden Green Energy." Grant swallowed. It's the company, that's what he said." Judge Chen's voice cut clean. "No, the holder is an entity called ES Capital LLC. Grant blinked. "What is that?" Reyes answered, calm as a guillotine blade. "Elena's entity." The courtroom erupted. Grant's face twisted into pure panic. No, that's not..." Judge Chen's gavel slammed. "Order!" Grant's voice broke through anyway. "Elena, what did you do?" Elena stood slowly. Her voice was quiet. "I bought the note, Grant." He stared at her like he didn't recognize her anymore. "You bought my debt," he whispered, disbelief shaking every word. You own..." Elena nodded. "I do." Grant shook his head frantically. "That's sick, that's cruel." Elena's eyes burned. "Cruel is laughing at your wife when she's trying to build a future. Cruel is using her identity to patch your failures. Cruel is standing in a courtroom and trying to take what she earned, just because you can't stand that she succeeded without you." Grant's voice turned pleading, raw. "I was desperate. I was going to fix it. I was going to..." Reyes stepped forward. "Your Honor, the court should also note, the post-nuptial agreement assigns all investment liabilities to Mr. Holloway personally. He waived any claim to Mrs. Holloway's investment accounts. He also affirmed that his debts are his alone." Sloane tried one last angle. "Your Honor, even if that is true, spousal support..." Judge Chen's voice was decisive. "Denied." Sloane froze. Judge Chen continued. "Mr. Holloway's request for liquidation of Mrs. Holloway's investment account is denied. The post-nuptial agreement is clear. The account is separate property, and the commingled transfer was induced under false pretenses supported by evidence." Grant's face collapsed. "No!" Judge Chen raised a hand. "Further, given the misuse of Mrs. Holloway's personal information in financial applications, the diversion of funds to a third party, and the demonstrated bad faith in these proceedings, the court orders Mr. Holloway to pay Mrs. Holloway's attorney's fees." Grant's knees looked unsteady. "I can't..." Judge Chen's voice didn't soften. "You should have considered that before you tried to make this court your tool." Grant turned to Elena, voice cracking into a whisper. "Elena, please." The arrogance was gone. The man who once laughed at her over dinner now sounded like someone begging for oxygen. Elena looked at him, tears shining, but her voice stayed firm. "You begged me to understand your world, so I did." Grant's lips trembled. "If you own the debt, you can ruin me." Elena nodded slightly. "I could." He swallowed hard. "Then don't, please." The courtroom held its breath. Elena took a slow step forward, not toward him but toward the truth. "I didn't buy your debt to destroy you," she said softly. "I bought it to protect myself because you taught me something, Grant." Grant's eyes searched her face, desperate. Elena's voice hardened. "You taught me that the moment you believe someone is beneath you, you'll justify anything to step on them." Grant's shoulders shook. "And then Elena said the sentence that ended the last of his power." I'm not beneath you, and I'm not your rescue. Judge Chen exhaled, concluding, "Judgment is entered accordingly." Grant's lawyer sat down slowly, defeated. Grant stood there, trapped in the wreckage of his own arrogance. And Elena, once the woman he tried to humiliate in public, now held the one thing he could never buy back: her dignity. Outside the courtroom, the air felt different, cleaner, sharper, like Elena had walked out of a storm and realized she could finally breathe. Grant stumbled behind, calling her name once, then twice, voice hoarse. "Elena, please, just talk to me." Elena didn't stop immediately. She let the silence stretch long enough for him to feel what she'd felt for years, being unheard. Then she turned. Grant looked smaller now, not physically but spiritually, like his confidence had been drained out with the court's ruling. "I didn't mean it," he said quickly, words tumbling over each other. "The things I said, the laughing, He swallowed. "I was under pressure. I thought I could fix everything." Elena's eyes stayed calm. "You didn't think you needed to fix how you treated me." Grant's voice cracked. "I was scared." Elena nodded once. "So was I. Every time you told me I was weak. Every time you made me feel like I didn't deserve to ask questions. Every time you treated my voice like a joke." Grant's eyes filled, frantic. "I was wrong, I admit it. Elena studied him for a moment, not with hatred, with clarity. "You want forgiveness because you're afraid," she said. "Not because you understand." Grant's face twisted. "I do understand. You won. You proved it. You're smart. He laughed bitterly through tears. "You're everything I said you weren't." Elena's voice softened, but only enough to be human. "I didn't need you to say that." Grant's shoulders slumped. "Then what do you want?" Elena looked past him, out at the sunlight spilling across the courthouse steps. "I want peace," she said. "And I want you to live with the consequences of your choices, without making me carry them." Grant's lips trembled. "If you enforce the debt, I'm finished." Elena's gaze returned to him. "You finished yourself when you decided your pride mattered more than your integrity." Grant took a shaky step closer. "Please, Elena, don't do it. I'll do anything." Elena's eyes narrowed slightly. "Anything?" Grant nodded quickly. "Anything." Elena's voice was calm. "Then stop trying to control the ending. You already wrote it." Grant froze. Elena reached into her bag and pulled out a simple letter, already signed. "I'm not here to destroy you," she said. "I'm here to free myself." Grant stared at the letter. "What is that?" Elena's voice stayed steady. "A settlement proposal. I forgive part of the debt, part, not all, because you need to understand that rescue isn't love. Responsibility is." Grant's hands shook as he reached for it. "Why would you, after everything, why would you offer anything?" Elena's eyes glistened, but her tone never begged. "Because I know what it feels like to be scared, and because I refuse to become you." Grant looked down, swallowing hard. Elena continued. "You will sign an admission of the identity misuse. You will cooperate with the bank and any investigation. You will stop contesting the divorce, and you will never again claim you built me." Grant's voice was barely a whisper. "And if I sign?" Elena's gaze was unwavering. "Then you get to rebuild it without stepping on anyone." Grant's shoulders sagged. He nodded once, defeated. "Okay." Elena watched him for a moment, then turned away. As she walked down the courthouse steps, the weight in her chest didn't vanish all at once, but it loosened. Because justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's a woman finally realizing she doesn't need permission to be powerful. Elena got into her car, hands steady on the wheel, and for the first time in a long time she smiled, not because she'd beaten him, but because she'd found herself again. And if there's one lesson here, it's this: never laugh at someone's vision just because it doesn't match your ego. The market rewards patience, life rewards humility, and karma has a way of showing up right on time. If you want more court drama stories packed with betrayal, twists, and hard-earned justice, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Because the next story might start with a laugh too. But it won't end that way.